Now we have our second speaker, Professor Elena Mangione. She's also a Spanish professor in the Department of Romance Languages and Literatures. And Elena, I guess your title has not changed?
My title has not changed.
Okay, wonderful. So it's Community-Based Learning Light, how a small investment in CBL activities can create a big impact in the classroom, celebrating the Day of the Dead. So thank you.
The presentation is really, as the project was spearheaded by my genius community partner, Cecilia Stanton, who is a teacher at John Adams High School. And I'm really grateful to her for her creativity and ingenuity in, well, spearheading the project and being a good partner all the way through. Now and in the future. So just a couple quick comments before we start to sort of pick up where Tatiana left off. Some of the questions that I was hearing at the end of her presentation, what I heard underneath all of that was Notre Dame's got a lot of support and I don't, right? So how do I make this work without that kind of financial support or maybe the moral support? We've presented on these topics. Rachel is a fantastic resource. And those of us who have presented on community-based learning light or otherwise have heard of some creative ways to get around that, including materials as book fees and some grants available especially to high school teachers. So there are ways around that, so don't let that be an obstacle if this is something you want to do. Okay, and the other thing I would say is that our project, the nice thing about having Ceci and this community-based learning light is that not only is this project now foundational for the course, that is Tatiana's course and some of the others that you'll hear are based on this partnership from day one all the way through the semester with some kind of culminating project at the end. Whereas our partnership is a little more limited, although there are some great benefits. So that's one good thing about it. The second good thing, actually just this morning I ran into a German colleague who said, well, you know, the Let's Talk sounds very interesting, but I don't really have a community partner. There's no German community here in town. And I said, as a matter of fact, I'm going to be talking about a partnership that doesn't require a whole community or a whole institution. If there are people interested in learning German, whether it's small groups or the Forever Learning Institute here in town or high schools or whatever, there are opportunities there as well. So don't be intimidated by the Spanish representation here. Community-based learning can work in all of the languages. Okay, so I'm Elena MangioneLora. I've been at Notre Dame for 20 years. I teach the 4th and 5th semester Spanish courses. And
I'm Cecilia Stanton Verduzco, and I teach at John Adams High School. This year I teach Spanish 3, 4 IB, 5 IB, and Spanish 6, but I've taught all levels, regular and IB. And this is my 10th year teaching. I am not from South Bend, but now I've lived many years in South Bend because I actually graduated from the University of Notre Dame and then realized, actually I think I want to teach. So I went another route and I've loved every bit of it. So.
And we're lucky to have you here. This presentation is also sort of a flower that blooms out of a collaboration with Rachel Parroquin, Tatiana Botero, and Andrea Topash Rios. And we talked about Tatiana's project and this project at the Central States Conference in Chicago 2 weeks ago. And we organized, so that there would be a common thread on our panel, we organized our conference or our presentation around the powerful model created by Jennifer Pigsa, which Rachel can tell you more about. But partnerships, the P, objectives, the O, work, the W, evaluation, the E, and reflection, which Tatiana did a great job describing, is the R. So this presentation will be organized around that. So here we go, partnerships.
So I'm going to start with partnership. So as a Spanish teacher, many of the things that we often want to do is kind of how can we get our students out of the classroom and do things that are not grammar, not vocab, and expose them a little bit more. Because as a high school teacher, I'm sure you remember maybe being in high school, often the lessons are placed around things like, learn your multiplication tables and, know your vocabulary, and we forget about all the metacognitive stuff and how to teach our kids how to communicate and how to teach our kids how to express themselves and work in groups and things like that. So I happened to be Elena's daughter's teacher one year, and she comes in to parent-teacher conferences and friendship blossomed, and we just started talking, and you teach at Notre Dame and I teach here, and oh my goodness, how about we start and put something together, and slowly started thinking of ideas. What could we do? Because it's like she was saying, it's a partnership for an activity or to do something a little bit different. It's not a full curriculum, it's not a full class, because we're both also bound by what we have to do and accomplish in class. So as a high school teacher, I'm given certain parameters of what I need to get done, so trying to figure out ways of how to get around that. So we sat down and started talking, talked a lot, as we both can do quite a bit of, and kind of started thinking, what are some cultural things that would interest the kids? And that's kind of how the partnership began, and we decided, let's go with Day of the Dead. That's a fun celebration. That's something that we could do with our kids. I think both college students and high school students would love. And we started this bond that we've been doing now for several years, included a couple other colleagues, and it has grown and it has become a little bit bigger. So that's where the partnership started. It started from me being her daughter's teacher and creating friendship, and then it started and then it continued on to be a partnership, and I love it. It's an awesome experience for our students. So.
Yeah, it's fun. And I love it too. Just an aside, well, Tatiana's classes now participate, so that's been a lot of fun. And Jasmine, I'm going to point you out. One of Ceci's former students from Adams is a current student of mine. She met me for the first time on this campus during the Day of the Dead thing. And so aside from the objectives that I'm going to point out here, a really nice aside is that the high school students are comfortable on a college campus. They're comfortable talking to professors. They can see that the college class can be fun, which we all know that it is. They are just in doubt. So, objectives. Our objectives when we dreamed up the project was to create an inviting space for high school students to experience college Spanish, to showcase their work to an interested audience, and to allow for informal conversation. So you can see, those of you who can't see, who like me would need your glasses, or who don't read Spanish, we put up the first page of our instructions there. So the project itself is 25 points, which, to give you some perspective, is about half of an exam or a composition. They would choose from a historical figure. The Notre Dame students have 3 days to meet and come up with the components of the project. And I think the Adams students have a bit longer. Quite a bit longer. Get a lot
Teenagers
more feedback.
take a little bit more time in accomplishing their goals, so yeah, a little bit longer. And then for the high school students, you can't see that. So one of the things I like to do, and obviously overall my goal is to learn the language. But like I was saying before, as high school teachers, we need to teach our students skills beyond specifically what we're teaching them. So, when thinking about this project, I wanted them to obviously gain a little bit of confidence speaking Spanish without that fear of, oh my gosh, what grade am I going to get? So getting out there and talking to other students, and then also realizing when they got here, these are college students, and whoa, my Spanish is about as good as theirs is. That's okay, I can do this. And then share with college students, of course, present in Spanish, which that's a skill to have. I know that, for those of you that teach in college, probably have your kids present. And our students sometimes are very shy about presenting, so I like to push the envelope a little bit more and say, hey, you're not just presenting in front of class today, you're presenting in front of class and college students. Go at it. And to have fun. Definitely always having fun, because if not, it wouldn't entertain them, it wouldn't engage them. So that's my objective with my students. So a couple of pictures I have here. The one at the bottom are my students listening to the presentations from the college students and kind of engaging in that. And then the picture I have over there on the right are my students presenting to everybody and just getting up and being able to do that. So, and I think the next is work. So work. So what do we do? So this has kind of evolved over the years, of course, because every good lesson, every good activity, you have to go back and you have to figure out, how do I fix this? How can I make it better? So the first year, we just did artifacts. So our students had to pick somebody who had died within the Spanish or Latin American culture, research, and then with their research, create something that would represent that person. And then eventually it has evolved into this giant thing at Adams, and we still continue doing the same similar type partnership here and activities here, but now we've gone into, they create an altar for that person in addition to the artifact that they bring and then present. So the kids have to research, they have to analyze, of course, because they have to figure out, what is important about this person to create this artifact. They have to create with creativity. I always tell them that, because sometimes just creating something and, maybe a sword will represent that person, but, how can you make it creative? How can you add symbols to it? And then present, engage, and then obviously learn. Looking at the pictures, so the group that worked over there, that's Tito Puente's altar. And they did a great job. They used a lot of symbols that represent him, the drums. And so we did the altars at Adams. But then the artifacts that they created, they brought here, the group at the top there, that right there, they created an entire clock representing the life of Picasso. And it has different things. And then we have Dali down here. And one of my girls was like, I'm going to dress up as Dali when I present. So it just kind of gets them out there and thinking about things that they would not normally be thinking about. So that's the work that we do with the high school students.
Perfect. On the Notre Dame side, they have to prepare a poster. So this one is Samuel Junipero Serra, who is the first Latino saint from California. They present, so they have to do a poster that shows their research and that they present to the Adams students. There's an artifact. This is a recreation of a Salvador Dali painting that's actually painted. They painted the inside of the box, and then there are two fresh bananas there. So it's quite in that tradition of Dali. There is an altar ofrenda at the end in which all of the artifacts are piled, and it makes for a very impressive presentation at the end. Let me just stop for a minute here, because I'm sure you're wondering, how long does this last, and how do the logistics work? That was a big struggle for us, wasn't it?
At the beginning.
At the beginning. So what I teach 4 courses, 4 classes different sections, sometimes of the same course. And so Ceci and her colleagues get a school bus and come to Notre Dame for the entire day. And then our students circulate in at the hour that they would normally have class. So that's really nice because then it's all of our students presenting and a few groups of hers, all of ours and a few groups of hers. We have learned, now that it's grown, that we need to include a break for the high school students that tend to get antsy after sitting for 8 hours in a day. So this coming fall, we'll be rotating some of them out to see the campus and so on every so often. But so by the end of the day, you have the ofrendas of all of the groups of all of the students throughout the day, and it's extremely impressive. I think we have a picture later on in the presentation. Okay, then we build in some time for a conversation in Spanish, exploration of the college campus, which you guys do, and we're going to do some more of so that they can take advantage of these wonderful facilities, the SNITE, the grotto, the main building, and so on. And, of course, the most important thing for teenagers is that we feed them. So here we do get some support from the university. We have a Teaching Beyond the Classroom grant, and we work with Rosales, who brings food, and there's always enough to go around. So they have breakfast and lunch, and it's very important to us that it be authentic food. The pan dulce, the tropical fruits, sugar cane, the fajita stuff, the sweets, Mexican sweets, and so on. And actually, you'll see on one of the worksheets, they have to talk about food that they've tried for the first time. So that's part of the experience as well. Valuation, oh, that's me. We're low on time, so I'll be quick. We gather data at Notre Dame from 4 different sources. So we revisit the objective. Did we do what we said we were going to do, and how do we know that? So we gather data from reflections, from this very simple rubric with some comments. So we look at the scores there, their performance. At the end of semester course evaluations, on their e-portfolios, the final reflections, students will talk about the experience, and so on. And then a debriefing in class. So my students, because I don't get to see all of their presentations, will also do them in class the following day. So we gather that data and we debrief and make changes for the following year.
And we do something very similar at the high school level. I have a rubric that I try and incorporate kind of as an IB assignment. So there's a speaking component, so that's part of the evaluation. But then also, very important, we get feedback from the students in that evaluation, like what did they like, what did they not like, what should we change. So the evaluation becomes really important as to how do we move on for the next year.
All right.
And then the reflection.
So this is a page from the e-portfolio with a collection of the student work throughout the semester. And as part of the e-portfolio, my students have to link something that they did during the semester to the learning objectives outlined on the syllabus. And then they have to reflect on and show how. So in this particular case, they included their third reflection to talk about culture. And they watched the Motorcycle Diaries and talked about that to a fellow student. But the first line here says, my third experiential learning was inspired by another project, a presentation on the life and legacy of Che Guevara during the Day of the Dead. So that inspired them to do some additional research, and the reflection is excellent. These are some comments from our students. And this is the last thing I wanted to share. This is reflection and sort of falls into the work. So that the students are engaged during the presentations, we give them a very brief worksheet that they fill out, the name of the person being presented, the general description, 5 adjectives to describe the artifact, the most interesting thing you learn. They do that for 3 of the presentations, and then there's a spot at the bottom where that they would then describe in more detail one of those presentations.
And then one of my favorite things that I do with the students is the postcard. So at the end, they have to write me a postcard about their experience, and that's a form of reflection. So it also helps me to figure out, like, are they liking it, are they not liking it, what do I need to change? But it also helps them reflect on their day, what they liked, and all of that. So, and they have to write it in Spanish, of course, so they use different skills, and I don't know, it's one of my favorite things. And then the last thing, because we're running out of time,
Right.
This has evolved into a partnership beyond the Day of the Dead. So for example, this year I brought my Spanish 6, and then all we did was just get our 2 classes together. And they played games, and they had conversation, and they had a blast. My kids said that that's probably one of the best things they've done this year. But getting them together, like the first 5 minutes was a little awkward because we're trying to make college students talk to high school students and the high school students. But once they opened up, they were laughing. And so here are just some pictures. I don't know if you guys have ever played the game Taboo in English, but we had to play Taboo in Spanish, and it was really funny. But now we're talking about even more, how do we expand this partnership of my Spanish 6 class with her classes beyond just this conversation. So.
That's it. Are there any questions for us? We have about 10 minutes for questions, I think.
Yes, we do.
Okay, good deal.
Yeah, have your high school student, are they from a very selective group of high school students, or is it more like
It's whoever I have in class that year.
So is it more like a public school?
It is a public school.
So-
It's the biggest public school in South Bend.
Okay, so when they get to interact with Notre Dame students, does that motivate them to see, a very selective university? Is this something possible for me? Do you have any discussion about preparation for college?
Hey, Jasmine, want to answer that? She was one of my students, and she's actually a student at Notre Dame.
So yeah, it's definitely a thing to consider, because I think a lot of people in my class were at first considering Notre Dame, or if they were looking at other schools as well. So having the experience to come on campus and to interact with the students that were taking the class that we'd probably be in if we continued in Spanish was definitely a good experience. And I think it really interested some people, because we were in high school and we're like, oh, Notre Dame, it's kind of like way up on the list, can we do this? And then being able to interact with the students that were not Notre Dame at the time, and being like, this is possible, this is definitely an option, so definitely cements
Which I have to congratulate that. That makes me feel
It's a
good.
recruiting tool.
So weird, yeah.
Well, I think one of my favorite things that I see the students is realizing, hey, I know about as much as they do. Like, watching my kids realize that is awesome, because then they realize, okay, because growing up here, they think Notre Dame's up here, and then coming into campus and interacting with the students and realizing we're not too far off. That's a good thing. It's a really good
And
thing.
the advantage for my students is that there was some showboating going on. We have 3 minutes, and we have to really outshine, the high school students, or not. I mean, it's your choice, but think about that for a minute. And they do. I didn't have a chance to show you, but we had this fabulous dance choreographed to a Selena song, and it was really good, and it was lots of fun. But they take it pretty seriously, which is nice too. So, other questions?
If somebody wanted to do or create a partnership like this in the future, how would you recommend going about it? Do you have any must-dos or any must-don'ts?
At least for me, I mean, for me personally, friendship is important, and I think that that's why it's been the way it's been, because Elena and I work really well together. We're both flexible, we're both creative, we both love what we do.
And we both have high expectations.
Yeah. So I think I think for me at least, that was important because it's harder to create that relationship with a professor, with somebody that doesn't work with you on a daily basis unless you have that relationship. So.
And something so important to keep in mind when we're talking about engaged learning is that it is a truly equal partnership. So sometimes I take the lead, sometimes she'll take the lead, but we're both co-educating our students. Both of our objectives are of the same importance. Both of us expect to put in the same amount of effort. So I think that would be the number one piece of advice. That's the advice that Rachel gave us when she began the ball rolling in talking about community-based learning and the difference between community-based learning and service learning. This is not a service project. This is two equal entities getting together and educating each other. So,
And flexibility is
yeah,
big.
Yeah.
Because we don't understand or we don't know exactly how the space will work always, and being flexible with our students and understanding, like Elena's great when it comes to my high school students. I mean, they're 16, 17, 18-year-olds that can be squirmy at times, and understanding that and just being flexible.
And one of the things that's really, really good is the way the flow of the day works. I mean, because what Elena said is very real. Like, our students come for their class period. So Elena's students and my students come for their class period. But Ceci's students come here for the whole day from 8 o'clock in the morning till 3. And so trying to keep the high school students engaged and not bored is really, really important. So we have the college students do like poster presentations. So they're like lined up around the room. So then the students have to go, the high school students kind of have to then walk, go and talk to them and hear their presentation, which is a couple of minutes long. And then they have to move to another one and we have that like a very timed. And then we switch it, and then we have a couple of the high school students that present to the entire group. So then switching up kind of the dynamic of the hour is really important. There's always coffee, food, in lots of things
Sugar.
that the students doing the whole day. Sugar. Yeah. So
Thank you for pointing that out. Yes, and then
That sounds like fun, but I can see the fun for high school students in doing this activity. But I wanted to see how the college students perceive it, taking in consideration the difference in level of research work, presentation, and cognitive abilities between the two.
you know, I've been impressed with Ceci's students. Now, Ceci works with them for weeks, and she gives them feedback, and they revise and redo. So and they've already presented at John Adams High School. So by the time they come to us, they are pretty seasoned. She's given them that feedback. We sort of are in tune with each other's expectations, and she knows how prepared they need to be. Now, there have been, I mean, like any group, you've got your superstars and you have your people who are superstars in the making. So, you know, so we all get through that, and that's okay. But they have already gotten feedback, made the revisions so that it is at a level that is really, and I mean, keep in mind they've worked for 3 days, but they've had a semester with me, but there is not such a difference. I mean, it is really impressive. I mean, Jasmine, wouldn't you say? The presentations are pretty.
Up to par, for the most part.
They spend a lot of time, yeah. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, more or less. It's just when you open a conversation, that's the bit that I was wondering about. Not
You would
even
be
in the presentation.
surprised how similar juniors and seniors are to freshmen and sophomores in college. They're not too different.
Yeah.
Maybe we have time for one more question.
One more.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask, before you guys settled on Dia de los Muertos, did you discuss any other possible holidays or celebrations?
We kind of threw some ideas out, I remember, but nothing that sticks out. I think because Day of the Dead is such a fun experience, and also for me at least, because I have to teach, one of the units I have to teach is celebrations and traditions. It's something that I can spend time on and talk about the meaning of death and looking at all those things. So it just kind of naturally, we were like,
Yeah.
that would be a good time of the
Seemed to be the
year
best
to go.
But we, so this activity, the next one, this took place the day after the election. And it was a very welcome distraction.
Yeah.
So Ceci said, my students, they want to converse more. They want to do something with these